Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's conversation. Today I'm joined by Stratfor's editor-in-chief, David Judson, to discuss Turkey's shaky political future. David, thank you for joining. Good to have you.
Good to be here. Yeah.
So Sunday, we have Turkish elections, municipal elections, and this is effectively a referendum on Erdogan's rule. Now,
much more than the regular municipal election.
Yeah, much more. And so you lived in Turkey in the 70s. You effectively witnessed also the rise of Erdogan and his party beginning in 2000. What have been both the constants that you've noticed in this political struggle in Turkey that we are all so familiar with, as well as the big differences that you see in this latest phase?
Well, I think that the best way to conceptualize Turkish politics, and was articulated in the 1960s by a professor by the name of Şeref Mardin, is the struggle between the center and the periphery.
Right.
This has been the fundamental, the back and forth between the elite Kemalist torchbearers of the revolution and the more conservatives in the hinterland. And power has flowed back and forth between those two poles pretty much on a regular basis since the 1950s. And I think we're seeing those tensions again in this election and in the challenges to Erdogan. But what has changed and what is different and what is really interesting is that what was kind of a historical two-way power struggle has now become a four-way or even six-way, as all these new coalitions between improbable partners are emerging, from the liberals to one Islamic group against the liberals and another different Islamic group, for example.
And in this kind of a political struggle, ideology can always be compromised for tactical aims, which is exactly, I think, what we're seeing now with the Gülen movement and its sort of tactical alliance with the center-left CHP against the ruling party.
And there's other interesting flirtations on the side of that the nationalists are having conversations with the Kurds, whom they pretended didn't exist as recently as 20 years ago. So it's a new ballgame, and we'll have a better sense of that ballgame on Monday.
So let's talk about another constant then, the tradition of patronage in Turkish politics, because certainly we're seeing, allegation after allegation, leak after leak on every big construction project that involved bribes on both sides of the political divide. This is by no means new for Turkey, though.
Right. Now, I think that this is this is another historical pattern that there's two elements of it. One is that even going back to Ottoman times forward, there is not a tradition of entrepreneurialism or capital accumulation the way we conceptualize it and are used to it in the West. Capital accumulation in the Ottoman Empire and through the Republican period was really through rent-seeking activities. Entrepreneurialism is focused on government relations.
Right.
And as recently as the early 2000s, 60% of the GDP came from state-owned companies. So all the industrialists and tycoons have to be in on the patronage game. Consequently, Turkey does not really have political parties. It has patronage networks. So yes, the corruption allegations against this government are severe and even shocking. But this is a movie we've seen many times.
Right. And I think the big implication now is that this patronage network that Erdogan has so carefully crafted over the past decade, it's splintering. And with the Gülen movement being a major component of that, particularly in the process of institutionalizing Erdogan's influence, so in the courts, in the media outlets, within the government, in the police forces, when you have each of those institutions now divided, this is going to be a very, very messy struggle, especially now as those that have been sidelined over the past decade now find an opportunity to regain their political voice.
Right. I think that regardless of the outcome, it would certainly be my expectation that Erdogan may be struggling a bit, but he'll still be standing politically on Monday. But the polarization is only to be compounded in the foreseeable future.
So let's take a step back and look at foreign policy-wise. Our assessment has been that Turkey is going to be very much confounded by this political struggle. But it still has a number of major foreign policy priorities in play, with the Russians bearing down, to their west. Certainly, Turkey is feeling that pressure, not just because of Crimea, but it has a very big energy dependency on Russia that is not going to be changed anytime in the near future. So on that front, also Syria as well.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this. This will be interesting to see how it plays out. That Turkey has at least been fairly strident on Crimea and its fellowship with the Crimean Tatars, who are kinfolk, outspoken in condemning what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. But with 60% of your energy coming from Moscow, the options are few. What are your thoughts on how things are going to play out in northern Iraq? That's the other side of the energy equation.
Yeah, more gridlock. So, of course, Turkey had its grand ambitions to garner the Kurdish vote at home, create a strategic alliance with the Kurds in Iraq, plus get energy in the process. Sounded great in theory. In practice, not working out per our forecast. And so Baghdad really has the upper hand. Turkey has way too many distractions to really put up a confrontation with either Baghdad or its Iranian sponsor. So all those investors who were really counting on a reliable unilateral export flow out of northern Iraq, not going to happen.
We were talking just a few moments ago before we came in about the past 4 or 5 years history of trouble with Israel,
right,
and the prospects for some kind of rapprochement there.
Yeah, so there in the short term, we actually may see some activity. So we've seen some lead up to a normalization between Turkey and Israel. We've been expecting that. But, economically, Turkey and Israel didn't really see too much of an impairment in their trade relationship.
No, in fact, not to interrupt, but after the Mavi Marmara incident of such fame, the next year, despite all the angry rhetoric on both sides and Erdogan storming out of a meeting in Davos, the bilateral trade increased 27%.
Exactly. But there is a commercial and strategic driver that is pushing this normalization, and that's in the Eastern Mediterranean, where, of course, Israel is figuring out ways to export its natural gas. Mm-hmm. It wants to use that resource to bind up these strategic relationships it needs in the region, including with Turkey. So there's all talk of an Israel-Turkey pipeline. Major technical and political complications to that, particularly with Cyprus, but we will see that normalization between Turkey and Israel. The commercial agreements will play into that, but that is certainly a phase that we're going to be seeing in the near future. But thank you, David, for joining me. We certainly will be watching Sunday, the elections. This will be a very important election for Turkey. And thank you all for joining us for this week's conversation. We'll see you next time.